Every jazz guitar player, or jazz musician for that matter, should have a B-flat blues in their locker, and I think one of the most straightforward ones you can learn is Thelonious Monk's tune, Blue Monk. So in this lesson, I'm going to show you how to play the chords and also break down the harmony of a jazz blues. Thelonious Monk wrote this song in 1954, and something that surprises me is that apparently this was his favourite of his own compositions, and it's quite different to a lot of the songs he's known for, in that it's very simple. And that's one of the things I love about this song, in that it has a very lyrical, this chromatic melody, which has like an old time, maybe New Orleans kind of feel to it. It's a really fantastic melody to get down. It's in B flat, which is a really common key to play a blues in. In terms of the form, it is just a regular 12 bar, nothing unusual going on there. And I would categorise this as a level 1 basic blues. It's nothing like, say blues for Alice, the Parker changes for a blues, the Bird blues. It's very simple. As it's a basic jazz blues, we don't need many chord shapes. We're going to use B flat 6 here off the E string, and also B flat 7. Always good with the chord to arpeggiate it like I'm doing here to check you've got clear ringing notes. And then E flat 7. Make sure you're not pressing too hard as well. And then E diminished. You could, if you prefer, change that to a 3-note voicing by just taking out the ring finger. It'll still work. And then F7, same shape as the E flat 7. So we just got a few shapes there. I'm sure most of those are familiar for you. Maybe the diminish, you can do it as a 4 or 3. Entirely up to you. One of the things that often differs between a jazz blues and a straight ahead blues song from, typical blues artists is the fact that not everything is dominant 7th chords. And say here, you could start and probably on something like I Real, I bet it says B flat 7 as the first chord. But more often than not, when jazz musicians comp a blues, they hold the dominant back. And you'll see I've got it in bar 4. So we have got a bar of B flat 6 rather than B flat 7. Moving to E flat 7, back to B flat 6, then B flat 7. So what that does to me is going to make the next change sound more kind of logical. We're going to take us to it nicely, but it just creates more interest rather than just say if I just play B flat 7, E flat 7 to 2 bars of B flat 7. I mean, that works, of course. It's nothing wrong with it, but I think I prefer that movement to the dominant in the 4th bar. But that's our opening line. B flat 6 for a bar, E flat 7 for a bar, B flat 6 for a bar, then to the dominant B flat 7. The second line, we're going to move to E flat 7 for a bar, and then the E diminished, and then B flat 6 for 2 bars. If I put the first 2 lines together, that gives us B flat 6, E flat 7, B flat 6, to the B flat 7, which leads us nicely to E flat 7, E diminished, B flat 6. Now, we're heading into the final line, so we're going to need to use our remaining chord, F7. So we're going to have 2 bars of F7, then a bar of B flat 6, half a bar of B flat 6, then half a bar of F7, just as a kind of signpost that we've reached the end of the form, like a turnaround and going back to the beginning. So that last line, 2 bars of F7, bar and half of B flat 6. So the count on the last 2 bars is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll notice more often than not when it comes to chord changes in jazz, they typically take place on beats 1 and beats 3. Obviously there will be exceptions to that with more complicated songs or songs where we have 4 chords in the bar, but you'll see there that F7 comes in on beat 3 of that final bar of the form. Piecing that all together, we'd have 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Love that diminished. Obviously, I'm comping it in a really simplistic way, just 4 to the bar, doing the dampening, the release. There could be much more interesting things, but I always think the place to start, and on my Patreon, my level 1 comping is just hit 4 to the bar. Make sure you can play in time if you're playing with others. Just give them the harmony they need. Context would dictate whether you do something more. You know, if you were playing this with other people and there was a pianist, for instance, then you'd probably pull back a lot of what you're doing. You know, what I was doing there, holding 4 to the bar, you know, if there's a drummer, that becomes less important. If there isn't one, then it becomes more important. So comping is something which, you know, I think it's good to have a basic way of doing it, and then depending on the scenario and context, you would adjust. Big differences to a regular blues song, as in not a jazz blues, is that use of a major chord, basically not a dominant in bars 1 and 3, and later on also basically not having everything as a dominant. That way we get more colour and more interest, and I think in the jazz blues it makes more of the movement to the next chord, particularly from bars 4 to 5. And sometimes you get like a Charlie Parker blues, where chord 1 will actually be B flat major 7, which is such a departure from using just a dominant or a ninth chord as the 1 chord. Now, like any jazz standard, these chords get varied and interpreted in different ways, and I think because of the way the head works, there's sometimes some extra F7s in here. So if I put this on the screen, you see sometimes you see these couple extra F7s just to have that extra kind of cadences in, so which would give us like this: 1, 2, 3, 4. And that would fit quite well with the head. Not essential, but I think you would find some people putting those F7s in to kind of follow the head. Now onto the harmony of this one. When it comes to analysing a blues, jazz blues, they really do kind of break some of the rules of harmony, if you like, which is a good thing, makes music very interesting. And we first need to think about what B flat means. It's an important key to know because it's very common for jazz compositions. Always start with what is the major scale in that key. B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat. So we've got 2 flats, which are B flat and E flat, and obviously we go back to B flat at the end. So when you're looking at a piece of music, the key signature at the start will have those 2 flats. Now if we harmonise that scale into 1, 3, 5, 7, we get the following 7th chords: B flat major 7, C minor 7, D minor 7, E flat major 7, F 7, G minor 7, A minor 7 flat 5, back to B flat major 7. Now what you'll notice there, we've got the roots of a few of our chords: B flat, E flat and F, the roots of the 1st, the 4th and the 5th chord. And as you know, I'm sure you know, a typical blues is built around 1, 4, 5. This song is no different, apart from a few things. So the first chord, B flat 6, is just chord 1. You can harmonise from the major scale a major chord, a plain major chord, a major 6 chord, a major 7 chord, a 6-9 chord. We've gone with B flat 6, so that's chord 1. We then move to E flat. Now as you saw a second ago, you do get E flat in the key of B flat, but you get E flat major 7. So this is technically an out of key chord, but saying this is out of key for a blues just seems a bit weird, but technically it is. And we would call it 4-7. So it's the 4th chord as a dominant chord, and I put it in red because it's, doesn't belong to the key of B flat major, but it's a very common chord to borrow, if you like. We then move back to B flat 6, so back to chord 1, and then to create a nice movement here, we are getting chord 1 as a dominant, 1-7. Now the other way you can look at chord 1 when we have it as a dominant is it's called the 5 of 4. Why? Because B flat 7 is the dominant of E flat, so it will lead us there. So by turning chord 1, B flat 6, into B flat 7, we get the dominant of E flat. So that takes you perfectly back to chord 4 as a dominant in bar 5. Now we then get the most kind of intriguing chord of the whole song, this E diminished 7th. Now, we would call this a sharp 4 diminished, because E flat would be the 4th in the key. So if we're building a chord off an E, that's a sharp 4 above it, and it leads really well back to B flat. Why does it work? If I play it like this, then go to B flat 7 or B flat 6, you really hear the voice leading. This is B flat with the 5th in the bass, with an F in the bass. So if you see here, if I go between E diminished and B flat 6, actually 2 notes stay the same. If I go to B flat 7, then only 1 note stayed the same. But there's still basically a lot of notes which are really close to each other, going up by a semitone, which, you know, when you get chord movements like that, they really do connect in nicely, and it's a sort of real nice point of tension and release. So as soon as you hit that E diminished, it leads you back. You hear there, particularly when I use this chord voicing, because you hear it on the same strings moving up, so you could always use that instead if you like. So second line's gone chord 4 as a dominant, sharp 4 diminish, back to chord 1. Final line, we hit the 5 chord finally for 2 bars, back to chord 1, and then just pop the 5 chord at the end. Why? Because the 5 chord always pings you back to 1, so, and if you're playing with other people, there's a risk people might not realise where they are, because the last 2 bars were just B flat, and then the next bar's B flat. There's a lot of B flat happening, and it's those kind of things where people get lost usually. You know, and a good bass player or good accompanist will mark the form there and put the 5 chord at the end to say we're going back to the beginning. What you want to get used to is what all these movements sound like. You know, what the 1 to the 4 sounds like in bar 1 to 2. What that sharp 4 diminished sounds like, and how it resolves back to chord 1 neatly, and so forth. And just, you know, use a song like this as a reference point for that sharp diminished. You know, it's a really common thing in many blues tunes. Now, there's plenty of materials over on Patreon this month for this tune. Throughout the month, spread out, there is a lesson on soloing over it. There is a lesson on comping it on my 3 levels. And there is also a lesson on how to play the melody in 3 different levels as well. Now, all of those resources are related to Blue Monk, but they're all just generally about overall improving your jazz guitar skills and knowledge, which you can roll out to all your other repertoire and future repertoire you learn. But if you've got any questions, feel free to message me about that, or head over to my Patreon page to check it out. Thanks for tuning in. Any questions on today's lesson, then you leave them below. Hope you're doing well. Hope your practice is going well. Don't forget, these lessons are uploaded every Monday, UK time of 5 or 6 p.m. I can never quite decide. Until next time, you take care.